Hello, everybody. It is Tom, and I am coming to you live from another sweltering day in Chicago. I have had to turn my air conditioner off so that I can record this, so if I turn into a puddle of goo whilst the recording is in session, I do apologize. Today, we are going to continue our look at the comics of Heartstopper, comparing them with the show, and having a good time, I hope. So, yes. Let's begin. So last time we looked at most of the Crush chapter, and today we're going to finish off the Crush chapter, which is chapter 2, and start on the next chapter, which is Kiss. And essentially, Kiss runs through like the whole rest of the show. So we're gonna take it in pieces. I initially thought we could just go like one chapter, one video, but that is not gonna happen, because like essentially we would be going from the party scene all the way up to Nick and Charlie at the beach in one video, and we're not gonna do that. Okay, so the last thing we saw in the previous episode was poor Nick. Nick has just been at Charlie's place, and we had the drumming session together, and Nick wanting to hold his hand, and then the hug, and then Nick goes home and looks up, am I gay? And I like girls, but now I like a boy, and is just really upset and like curled up in his blankets crying. So yeah, then we skip to April, 2 weeks later. We are treated to a beautiful shot of Charlie's shoes. We can see here that they are in the middle of a rugby game, and Nick, as usual, is running around being the rugby king. And Charlie is on the sidelines, hanging out, being a reserve. So this scene in the show, Tao physically came to join Charlie at the game.
So, we're doing well.
But here, they're just texting. Obviously, for the sake of the show, makes much better television for Tao to physically be there. But in this case, Charlie hanging out on the bench, tapping away on his phone. Kind of similar to how things go in the show. He says, "Hey Tao, so about Nick Nelson." And Tao is like, "What?" 3 question marks. Has something happened? 3 question marks. And Charlie's like, "Well, I think he might maybe like me back." Explain.
You know how I thought you were straight?
Yes.
Well, I've kind of been feeling like maybe he isn't.
Okay, so then here we get a few scenes of what's happened over the Easter holidays. So Charlie says, over the past 2 weeks during the Easter holidays, we've hung out like almost every day. And he's a lot more, physical. We hug now. Lovely shot of Nick with his arm around Charlie and Nellie just hanging out, being the supportive dog friend. And then sometimes I just catch him looking at me, and a beautiful shot of Nick looking at Charlie with a blush in his cheeks. So of course Charlie is accurately picking up on how Nick has been treating him, but unfortunately here comes Tao with a bombshell. "Look, Charlie, I didn't want to say anything, but I've asked around and I've heard Nick's had a crush on a girl called Tara Jones from Higgs School for like 3 years or something." So this is a lot more accurate, but also a lot less dramatic. So in the show, Tao is like straight up, Nick is in love with a girl.
Nick likes a girl.
What? Like, he's in love with a girl.
Whereas here, we know, he's had a crush on a girl for like 3 years. It's not necessarily something that Nick has just developed and feels really strongly about. It's just something that's been going on for a long time. So Charlie obviously looks pretty upset. And then Charlie gets pulled out of his thoughts by beep. And look, they've won the game. So of course, the first thing Nick wants to do is yell, "Charlie, we won!" And in the show, this is much more, separate, where like Nick stays on the field, Charlie stays over on the sidelines with Tao. It makes perfect sense. But here, Nick just like runs over to Charlie and hugs him and picks him up and spins him around, and they hug, and like Nick just wants Charlie to be a part of the celebration. So like he pulls Charlie over to where all the other guys are and makes sure that he feels included, even though he was just a reserve on the sidelines during this. And Charlie, of course, having that moment where he looks at Nick and thinks about what Tao has just told him and is like, oh crap. And then Nick looks at Charlie and has his own moment of like, oh crap. So I really like the parallel there between both of them kind of looking at one another when the other is not looking and having feelings. So, okay, and now here comes one of my favorite parts. So one of my favorite things about the comics is that we get to see Nick's rugby friends reacting to the relationship between Nick and Charlie prior to them coming out. So we have Christian, Cy, and Otis all doing the old ... looking at Nick and Charlie. Charlie tenderly brushing away the mud from Nick's face. And then Cy just saying, so Nick has a crush on Charlie, right? And the other two look at him like, oh. And he's like, we've all been thinking it. And Christian agrees, yeah, they do seem really close. So it's nice to see that other people have been noticing what's been going on with Nick and Charlie here. And also the fact that Nick's friends are not so clueless. Like, Nick's friends are tuned in enough to Nick and his feelings and his behavior to catch that something is going on. Like, you'll notice they don't say Charlie has a crush on Nick, even though we see Charlie being the one initiating the physical contact here. They say Nick has a crush on Charlie. So it's clear that they see through Nick's behavior here, which is great, which speaks for the depth of their friendship. Okay, and so then we have some speculation where Christian's like, but Nick's not gay, is he? And Cy says, well, I guess we don't know. And Otis, he doesn't look gay, and didn't he have a crush on that girl, Tara Jones? And Ms. Singh, hero that she is, pops up, appears a la Tori. You can't tell whether people are gay by what they look like, and gay or straight aren't the only two options. Anyway, it's very rude to speculate about people's sexuality. Go home, lads. And I did enjoy seeing this particular panel pop up a lot during the discourse when some folks online were trying to basically force Kit Connor to come out as something, like to declare his sexuality, and he has said several times that he doesn't feel comfortable doing that or feel the need to do that.
You know, we're still all so young, and to start sort of speculating about our sexualities and maybe pressuring us to come out, you know, when maybe we're not ready. I mean, for me, I just feel like I'm perfectly, you know, confident and comfortable in my sexuality, but I don't feel the need to really, you know, I'm not too big on labels and things like that. I'm not massive about that, and I don't feel like I need to label myself, especially not publicly. It feels a bit strange to make assumptions about a person's sexuality just based on, you know, hearing their voice or seeing their appearance, or, you know, I feel like that's a very interesting, slightly problematic sort of assumption to make.
So nice to have Ms. Singh speaking up for Nick and Charlie and for Kit Connor about, let's not speculate about people's sexualities, especially when they're not ready to talk about it. Okay, so then the last thing we have here is Cy saying, I can kind of see it, Nick and Charlie, and Nick with his arm around Charlie. So then we jump to the next scene, Nick and Charlie in form, and Nick asking, are you going to Harry Green's party on Saturday?
Do you want to go to Harry's party? With me?
And in this case, because Charlie in the world of the comics is popular, he has already received an invite. So he says, I was invited, but I don't know. There'll be like 200 people there, right? And Nick just looks very like, please come. All my other friends are dickheads, and I don't want to have to spend an entire evening with them.
I don't know, it doesn't really sound like my sort of thing. Please come. I want you to be there.
So in the show, Nick is just like, please come, I want you to be here. But here, he straight out says, like, look, my friends are dicks. Can you please come so I have someone who's not a dick to talk to? And Charlie says, sounds like you need new friends. And Nick says, well, I have you now, so ... and big old blush from Charlie. So, will you come? And Charlie says, yeah, definitely. It'll be fun if you're there. And Nick is happy. So both of them very happy about the possibility of going. And I really like this scene. It's nice and flirty, but also like I like that Charlie is, he's telling the truth. He's speaking up for what Nick should obviously do. Like, Nick, if you don't like your friends, if all your friends are dickheads, maybe you need to get new friends. But it's interesting how Nick deflects this. So we can see that even though he recognizes that his friends are kind of jerks, he's not ready to let go of them or let go of the person he is when he's with them quite yet. He has Charlie, but the addition of Charlie doesn't necessarily negate the awfulness of his existing friends. So then we jump to Harry's party at the hotel. Wow. There's music, there's people, there's Charlie looking anxious, being checked by security to make sure he's on the list. Charlie wandering around, and I love this expression on Charlie's face. This is me anytime I face a new social situation. But he walks into this gigantic ballroom with all these people around, DJ in the corner, music blasting. But look, there's Nick. Nick standing out from the crowd, and their eyes meet, and they both say, I've been looking for you. I've been looking for you. I want to say in the show they both have their hands on each other's shoulders in this moment, but in this one it's just Nick who has his arms around Charlie there, has his hands on Charlie's shoulders. So then Nick says, oh, it's so loud in here, do you want to go get a drink? Charlie's like, yeah, sure. So off they go, they get a drink, they sit down at a table, they're enjoying their drinks, and then hey, Nick, who could it be? Who could it be coming to talk to them? And here comes our favorite dickhead, Harry.
To play Mario Kart. Nicholas!
All right.
In this side, it's just Harry, Christian, and Cy, which is interesting because Christian and Cy are two of Nick's friends who are not assholes. All right, so Harry's like, why are you hanging out in here? How dull. And then shares his important news, which from the beginning, like, we can really tell that Nick is like, ugh, this guy.
Why are you hanging out in here? It's a bit boring, isn't it?
We just are.
I feel like in the show we get more of a feeling of closeness between Nick and Harry. Like, Nick is not quite so annoyed with him from the start. Like, it's clear that he's a little bit annoyed that Harry has interrupted him and Charlie hanging out together. But here, like, he's genuinely like, he's really annoyed from the start. Okay, so Harry's like, Tara Jones is here. And of course, the very mention of this, Charlie gets very disappointed and depressed because, obviously you don't want the person that you have a crush on to go hang out with someone else who you think they have a crush on.
Tara Jones is here.
So what?
This is your big second chance, mate. Let's make it happen.
So Harry says, remember her, the girl you had a crush on all through year 7 and 8, the one you kissed at the year 8 Higgs Truum disco? Well, now's your second chance. Right, Charlie? Yeah, and the fact that Harry, who we know at this point he suspects that Charlie has a crush on Nick. So the fact that he specifically comes over here to pull Nick away from Charlie and push him in the direction of a girl, and then like stab that knife in a little more, being like, right, Charlie, heh, yeah, shouldn't Nick go hang out with this girl that he likes, is really cruel.
They kissed when they were 13. Proper romantic. You should go for it, right?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
Okay, so Nick protesting the whole way, like, that was years ago, I haven't even spoken to her since then, and Harry just dragging him along, like, oh, she's really hot, and Nick keeps looking back at Charlie.
Come on, mate. Harry, come on. She's just down the corridor.
I haven't talked to her for years.
So, she's super hot now.
Harry just like shoves Nick over to Tara and then fucks off. And we have a little mini flashback to what they looked like a few years ago, which we get in a future episode, which is very cute. But yeah, Tara looks uncomfortable, Nick looks uncomfortable, but all Charlie sees is the two of them talking and smiling, and he's like, oh crap, and he turns and he walks away, and it's like, stupid, 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 I'm such a stupid idiot, and then immediately bumps into Ben.
Sorry. Hey.
Nick is explaining, oh, sorry about this, Harry sort of dragged me over here, and Tara's like, no, it's fine, I know what he's like. I am sad that we don't get the eye roll from Tara when Harry comes up, because that is a beautiful moment in the show when she's just like, oh, this fucking guy.
Hey, Tara, I've got someone who wants to see you.
Okay, so then Tara coming out with the truth immediately. I think he must be one of the only people who doesn't know I'm gay. Now, in the comics version of the story, Tara is already out at this point. She and Darcy have been out for a while, so everyone already knows that they're in a relationship, except for Harry and Nick, apparently. So Nick is surprised, and Tara's like, haha, you didn't know either, that's my girlfriend over there. Tara immediately goes on to, so I heard you've been hanging out with Charlie Spring a lot recently. Are you just friends? Or so I don't know where Tara has been getting her information, but super accurate. Though we do see Darcy talking to Otis. I think this is Otis. It looks like him. It could be that they heard from him, since he and Cy and Christian were speculating about Nick and Charlie's relationship. Or maybe more people in the school are talking about the possibility. So who knows? But somehow Tara has got the goods. Tara has got the news that Nick and Charlie are spending a lot of time together, and she wants to know what's the deal. So Nick gets a little blushy and doesn't really know what to say. And Tara looks very understanding and says, you can always talk to me about it if you need to. But before they can talk about anything, Nick realizes that Charlie has disappeared. So he asks the gang, did any of you see where Charlie went? Nobody did. And Harry's like, why do you even hang out with him? And Nick says, we're friends. And Harry says, but why? We just are. Yeah, so here we see some other people piping in. So this random douchebag, he's just some nerdy little year 10. And Otis, not saying anything douchey, just says, he got really popular after all that bullying shit last year, right? And Harry says, do you just feel sorry for him because he's gay? No, wait, do you think he fancies you? Oh my god, how sad. And Nick is just like, really pissed off. You know what, Harry? Fuck you. You're a pathetic, homophobic, self-obsessed dick, and I really dislike you. And Harry's just like, ooh, happy fucking birthday. And we get this wonderful moment. Darcy saying to Tara, I actually love him. So now we talked about this when we were talking about the actual show, but they were trying to keep the rating of the show down so that younger people could watch it. So I understand why we lost this moment, but I love this moment. I love Nick just like publicly just ripping into Harry like, you are a dick, you are a homophobe, fuck you, I don't like you, goodbye.
That's homophobic, Harry.
Come on, mate.
And I really don't like you. Happy birthday.
So Nick goes around looking for Charlie, doesn't see him anywhere, but then, oh, here's Charlie sitting at a table, hooray. And Charlie looks kind of down, but, he's just hanging out. And here comes Nick to sit down next to him, and Charlie apologizes, saying that your friends were kind of intimidating.
You left? Sorry, I felt like I was in the way. And your year 11 friends are kind of intimidating.
And Nick is like, don't be sorry, they're all dickheads. I'd rather just hang out with you anyway. And we have a nice little smile. And then Charlie saying, I just ran into Ben. Nick looks very concerned. Shit, are you okay? Yeah, I mean, I dealt with it. He tried to apologize, but
So I just ran into Ben. Ben? Yeah. I mean, I dealt with it. He tried to, apologize for what happened, but I pushed him into a wall and told him to go away.
so then we flash back to what was going on with Ben, who is smugly smiling as usual. And he says, "I'm sorry, okay? Have you finished sulking about it?" And Charlie says, "Leave me alone." And Ben flat out grabs his arm. So Charlie just slams him up against the wall. "Do not fucking touch me." And I love the look on Ben's face.
Look, I'm sorry about what happened, okay? Have you finished sulking about it?
Leave me alone.
Oh, come on.
Do not touch me!
And I want to say this is the last we see of Ben in the comics. I want to say this is the last we see of him, but I could be wrong. I might not be remembering correctly, but I think this is the last we see of him. So this is a great way for Charlie to just get him out of his life. Fuck off. Do not touch me. Okay, so then he just walked off. So yeah, I think he got the message this time. And Nick, I really love this panel of Nick just smiling, proud, in love with the little heart. And he takes Charlie's hand and says, "I'm so proud." And Charlie's like, "Shut up, now I'm embarrassed."
I think he got the message this time. I'm so proud. Shut up.
And here we go. It's kind of noisy in here, isn't it? Shall we go somewhere quieter again?
It's kind of noisy in here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Should we go somewhere quieter again?
So still holding Charlie's hand, leads him off through the crowd. Hand in hand, they walk, and then they go quite a long time before Nick kind of realizes that he's been holding Charlie's hand and takes his hand back, both of them blushing. And then Charlie is the one who's like, "I'll race you," maybe trying to make Nick feel better about the fact that he is, maybe trying to make Nick feel better about his embarrassment, or just break up the awkward moment that's happened here. So, "I'll race you to where? Anywhere!" And off Charlie goes. I do kind of like the way they did it in the show, where Nick is the one who challenges Charlie to the race, but it's also kind of out of nowhere.
You wanna race? Oh, you wanna race me? No. You wanna race?
So off they go. Charlie, of course, in the lead. Charlie making fun of Nick for being old.
It's because you're old.
"I'm only 18 months older. Okay, old man." And off they go to Function Room B, the Room of Dreams. Function Room B is super opulent, as it turns out, and they pause to admire it. All right, so Nick sits down. Charlie sits next to him, and Charlie gets the guts to ask the question he's been wanting to ask. "Was Harry being serious? Do you like that girl?"
So, was Harry being serious? Do you like Tara?
Nick says, No, definitely not. We kissed at a party when we were 13, and I liked her at the time, but I've honestly barely thought about her since then, and I definitely don't like her that way anymore." So we get quite a lot of information there. And Charlie's like, "Oh, okay." And Nick looks pleased that Charlie is pleased, and Charlie says, "So you don't have a crush on anyone at the moment?" And a little bit of alarm from Nick, but he manages to say, "Well, I didn't say that."
So you don't have a crush on anyone at the moment?
Well, I didn't say that.
Charlie, of course, remembering what Tao said about Nick having a crush on a girl, says, "Haha, what's she like then?" And Nick looks a little bit sad, and then says, "You're just gonna assume they're a she."
What's she like then?
You're just gonna assume they're a she.
So we have the beautiful, "Are they not a girl?" kind of turning and getting closer. Nick blushing a lot, saying, shrug, hands moving closer. And Charlie says, "Would you go out with someone who wasn't a girl?"
Would you go out with someone who wasn't a girl?
I don't know. Maybe.
And Nick says, I don't know, maybe. And I love how, like, every little motion is really well captured here, where we see Charlie moving just slowly, bit by bit, closer and closer. We see their feet getting closer together. And then Charlie says, would you kiss someone who wasn't a girl? More blushing from Nick, but he's not looking away. They're very close to each other here. He says, I don't know.
Would you kiss someone who wasn't a girl?
I don't know.
And then Charlie touches their fingers together and says, would you kiss me?
Would you kiss me?
And we have this beautiful moment from Nick where he says, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have their first kiss. Yay. So I really love how this plays out in the show. I think they did just a masterful job with that scene. It's one of my all-time favorite scenes in the whole show. Okay, so we see them kissing, and then they kind of pull away and both look away, embarrassed. And Nick takes Charlie's hand. Charlie looks at him like, oh shit, maybe he actually does like me. And kiss number 2. More passionate. Kissing, lots of kissing. And then they pull away, and Charlie asks, you okay? And Nick says, and then we have, Nick, are you up here?
You okay?
And in this case, it's Cy, not Harry, who's looking for Nick. And of course, in the show, it makes perfect sense that it's Harry. So Cy says, Nick, I know you're up here somewhere. Okay, Harry wants to talk to you. So it is still in the name of Harry that we're looking for Nick, but it's Cy, in this case, who's looking for him. So Nick stands up really quickly, and Charlie just looks really stricken and upset. And we have this horrible moment of just the look on Nick's face when he's looking down at Charlie. He looks really upset, and this expression could be interpreted as him regretting kissing Charlie. So Charlie, of course, feels awful about it. But Nick does say something here. He doesn't just walk off in silence, but he says, I've got to, and then he goes. And poor Charlie is left all alone in Function Room B, and apologizes, which is very in character for Charlie, but he says, I'm sorry, and kind of slides down the wall and is very sad and is crying. Poor Charlie. Angst. So much angst. Now this officially moves us into the kiss chapter. We're going to go a little bit into this one just to resolve this situation because we don't want to leave off with Charlie crying on the floor in Function Room B. Okay, so later that night we have Charlie kind of crying in his bed, holding his little stuffed animal, and we get a flashback to him asking his dad to pick him up early, and his dad sighs and says, fine, did something happen? And Charlie says, I just didn't have anyone to hang out with. I thought your friend Nick was going to be there, and Charlie says he stayed with his year 11 friends. So, and I do think it's interesting that show Charlie's dad, so Charlie's dad in the show, seems to be a lot more compassionate and nice and understanding towards Charlie, and Charlie tells him the truth. He's pretty open with his dad about the fact that he's upset, whereas in the comics, Charlie just kind of pretends that everything's okay. Oh, Nick just ended up hanging out with his year 11 friends, it's fine. Okay, so Charlie is very, 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 very sad and crying, and it's heartbreaking. And then we have Nick lying on his bed staring at the ceiling, remembering Harry asking him, Nick, are you even listening to me? And then Nick just turns away and is like, I have to go. And Harry's like, what the fuck? In the show, it really fits in with the arc where Nick kind of makes up with Harry in this scene.
There's no need to start anything, just because you're in a bad mood at my birthday.
Yeah. Guess I was just in a mood.
To kind of keep the status quo, keep his place in the friendship group, because he's freaking out about what's just happened. But here, he kind of starts to, I guess, make peace, but just turns away. He's like, no. So he clearly prioritizes He prioritizes Charlie over Harry in this case. Runs back to the room, but Charlie, of course, is not there anymore.
Charlie?
Okay, so we see Nick remembering the look on Charlie's face, realizing he's done a super shitty thing, and starts typing a text message to Charlie, which says, hey Charlie, I'm so sorry for running off and leaving you. It wasn't your fault. I was just... But he ends up deleting it, I guess figuring out that, like, no, texting is not the way to do this. This is something that they have to talk about in person. So he throws his phone against the wall and does not break it, but then is very upset, saying fuck, and just generally thinking that he's made a mess of things, which, understandable. Okay, so next morning, poor Charlie, less than 2 hours of sleep, looking pretty rough, with his gay NASA lock screen here. And no new messages. And Tori asks him if he's okay, but he's just like, yeah, and turns away and drinks some tea, brushes his teeth, thinks about kissing Nick, and then remembers Nick's face at that moment. Mom saying, can you get the door, please, because the doorbell's ringing.
Charlie, can you get the door, please? Look at the postman.
Fine, 1 sec.
So off Charlie goes and opens the door, and oh look, it's Nick in the rain. Shh.
Hi.
And Nick says hi, and Charlie says, Nick.
Hi.
Okay, so that is where episode 3 leaves off. So I think we'll stop there. So the next time, I think it probably makes sense to sort of follow the episodes. Now, there are some that we can't really do that because episode 4 is almost entirely just in the show. Like, there's no comics counterpart to episode 4. But we'll do our best kind of following along that way. So, okay, so we'll stop there. Yeah, I should probably have some closing remarks or something, but my brain is a little bit melted by the heat right now. Okay, so this concludes this portion of our look at comics versus show. I think in this one we got to see some of the major differences. We got to see a lot more of Nick's friends, kind of picking up on the relationship between him and Charlie. And it makes sense because, I mean, it makes sense that in the comics there's a lot more physicality to their relationship. And Nick is really just unselfconsciously affectionate with Charlie and really wears his heart on his sleeve a lot more. So I think it makes sense that Nick's closest friends would pick up on that. And judging by the fact that Tara from the other school has also heard that Nick and Charlie are spending a lot of time together, either she has been talking to Nick's friends or the word is spreading around to more than just those people. So maybe other people are also noticing that stuff is going on there. And if that is the case, it would make sense that Harry is suddenly on a crusade to get Nick and Tara together, either because he really believes that there might be something between Nick and Charlie, or because he just wants to, I don't know, prove that Nick is not gay by, like, pushing him into the first heterosexual relationship that he can find, and kind of sticking it to Charlie in the meantime. But yeah, like, I think I really love, as we've said before, I really love both versions. I love the comics version. I love the show version. Both of them do great things in different ways. And yeah, I look forward to looking at more of the comics versus the show in our next thrilling episode. So, Okay, that's all for me. I'm going to end now so that I can start editing this and also turn my air conditioner back on because it's really hot. So, and they promised me a thunderstorm. They promised me like some cooling rain and thunder and lightning and a cozy afternoon, but it is bright and sunny and hot and humid. So I will sue someone. Okay. All right, I hope everyone is having a great day or night or whatever time it might be, and I will see you next time. Okay, goodbye.